In the previous video, we have added buttons and labels to our ship UI. Today we are going to start using sliders and progress bars controls. In Unit UI Toolkit, a slider is a UI control that lets the user select a numeric value within a range by dragging a handle along a track. Make sure the lower panel flex direction is set to row. Align items to the center and justify content as spaced evenly. Then add a new visual element in it, above the impulse drive in the hierarchy. Name it a speed panel. Its flex shrink is 1 and grow 0, and its size width is 500 pixels. Next, the visual element should be inside. Name it impulse speed text. Then its flex shrink and grow are 1, and direction is row. Justify content space between. It will hold two labels related to the impulse speed. First one is impulse speed text. Apply text selector to it and set its text attribute to impulse speed. The second label will be impulse speed value. It also needs text selector, and its text attribute is 6, since that's our initial impulse speed value. Now we need to adjust some of its properties. Width size is 100 pixels and height stays as auto. Create one more visual element in speed panel and name it impulse speed. Set to 1 its flex shrink and flex grow to 0. Align items to the center and size width to 500 pixels. Now we have to find the slider control and drag it into hierarchy under impulse speed visual element. Name it as impulse slider. Set its attributes value to 6 and height value to 100 and width to 500 pixels. Since this default looks boring, we're going to change style a bit. If we expand the slider in the hierarchy, we see that the slider is more of a complex control. It has its own internal elements. And if we check the inspector of the slider control under style class list, we can find some internal style selectors applied to it. Also, sliders' internal elements have some internal selector applied. Their names could differ depending on the unit version. By modifying these internal selectors, we can change the look of our slider. We can create our own selector with the name of the internal selectors and modify it. But be aware that this will affect all the controls that have this selector applied. We can also modify only the internal selectors of a specific slider. We're going to use both variants. First, we're going to modify Unity Slider Label Selector. Here we will only set display to none since we won't use this label. Next, we'll modify Unity Base Slider Dragger. Its top position offset will be -10 pixels and size 50 by 50 pixels. Set its new background color code. Its border radius is 25 pixels and border width 0 pixels. Next, we want to modify Unity Base Slider Tracker internal selector, but we want this modification to be specific to only this slider. This can be done by specifying the slider name and its internal child selector, like this: Impulse Slider, Unity Base Slider Tracker. Set its top position offset to -2, size 30 by 10 pixels, background color, and its border radius 5 pixels. Next one to modify is Unity Base Slider Drag Container Selector. Size height to 10 pixels, background color to this color code, and border radius 5 pixels. And the last slider selector is Unity Base Slider with a height of 20 pixels, spacing margin 30 pixels. With this, we have applied our customized style to our first slider. Now for the warp speed, just duplicate impulse speed text and rename it as warp speed text. Rename also its children by replacing the word impulse in their name with word warp. Warp speed text attribute will be warp speed, and warp speed value will have text 1, since this will be our initial warp speed. Duplicate impulse speed visual element and rename it as warp speed. Rename also its slider to warp slider. Set its attribute value to 1 and height value to 10. And just modify its specific internal selector warp slider Unity Base Slider Tracker. For that, we can just duplicate impulse slider unity-based slider tracker. Rename the first part to warp slider and set its width to 50 and value attribute to 1. With this, we have both of our sliders. For progress bars, we need one more visual element in lower panel. Let it be the first one and name it progress panel. Adjust its size to 400 by 300 pixels, and flex grow should be set to 0. In progress panel, we're going to have a combination of label and progress 3 times: total energy, energy consumption, and shield status. We can first add all 3 labels, so add new label here, rename it as energy label and set its text to total energy. Apply text selector on it. Then duplicate it 2 times, and the second one rename to consumption label with text energy consumption. The last one name is shield status label with shield status text. Now drop a progress bar below energy label, name it energy progress and set its size height to 30 pixels. For the progress bars, we're going to also modify some of its internal selectors to get a better looking control. The first one is Unity progress bar progress, and we will modify its position top and left to -2 pixels, its size height to 30 pixels, background color, and border radius to 10 pixels. The next one is Unity progress bar background with flex shrink and grow 0, size height 30 pixels, background color, border width 0, and radius 10 pixels. And then, for Unity progress bar title container, we just set display to none, set a value in attributes to 95 with a high value of 100. Now we will duplicate this progress bar, place it below consumption progress, name it consumption progress, and set its value attribute to 5. Duplicate the progress bar once again, place it below shield status label, rename it as shield status progress, and set its value to 75. With this, we have finished work in UI Builder. Now we can switch to C# script. Here we need a few more variables to hold the references to the labels, sliders, progress bars we created, as well as some of the sliders' internal part tracker. Then also variables to hold impulse speed, warp speed, impulse, and warp consumption values. Next, we get these controls by query method. Here are sliders-related callbacks. We are reacting on change event and reading float values. After callback registration, we set initial styles. And then we implement actual callback functions. Every time the impulse slider value changes, this function will run. Here we are setting the impulse ship speed directly from the slider value, displaying on UID speed, and adjusting consumption progress bar value. Here we have similar behavior with warp slider. In this function, we just need to update impulse speed. We can now test what we have created. With the impulse slider, we can now control impulse speed. And with the warp slider, we control warp speed. In some later video, we will improve warp speed behavior by adding animations. In the next video, we are going to create our first custom control custom toggle button. This control will allow us to engage the warp drive and ship shields. See you in another video.